The following is a sponsored episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm so thrilled to be joined today by Rachel Leslie for a conversation on why the hybrid creative partner model is replacing traditional agencies. I don't know about you, that term is newer to me, so I'm very curious to dive into this discussion. But first, a quick intro to Rachel. Rachel's the founder and editor-in-chief of Lāer Studio, a copywriting agency supporting today's leading CPG and purpose-driven brands like Away, Zola, Avocado, Goop Kitchen, and more. Their client portfolio is stacked. And with a journalism degree and over a decade of experience in marketing throughout her career, Rachel has worked in the agency world and on the brand side as a digital copywriter at Nike. She's obsessed with the power of brand storytelling when it comes to today's top of mind brands. And at the helm, she supports her team and clients as the editor-in-chief, leading creative strategies and collaborating with marketing teams. At Lāer, she also supports small business owners and emerging copywriters with educational resources and DIY templates. Rachel, so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Ellen. I appreciate it.
I am always thrilled to get to chat with a fellow Oregonian. I think it makes it extra special. So you're not far away from me, just up north in Portland. And like I mentioned, I think this conversation's really interesting, Rachel, because, hybrid creative partner, that's a term that I'm sure a lot of people maybe haven't thought of or heard of before. So maybe let's start there before we get into the meat of this conversation. How would you define what a hybrid creative partner is, and how is that different from a typical agency or freelancer relationship?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'd like to say I've coined the term, but I've definitely heard it in different scenarios like creative collaborator. But essentially, it's a creative partner that's not a part of the team, but they act and operate like they are. Whereas like a typical agency brand partnership, it feels more separated. They're not in the same programs with their clients. They're not in the day-to-day. They're delivering campaigns or creative work kind of on a one-off basis, whereas like the hybrid model is more integrated into the day-to-day and ongoing.
That makes sense. So when you say not integrated into programs, you mean like, the client's project management system like Asana or ClickUp, or their communication channels like Slack or an internal email. You're saying that someone like you or your team at Lāer Studio, you're able to actually jump into those spaces so that the workflows are a little bit more seamless. Am I understanding that right?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. So we're integrating into all the programs that they use. There's nothing that's off limits. So we have a lot of experience working in Slack, Asana, really just making sure we're available to them for any and all needs that arise. Whereas an agency partner might be collaborating on calls or sending deliverables through a platform like Google Drive, but they're not in the day-to-day project management tools that you and I use on the daily.
And I know from the client side, from the business side, when hiring, it is such a relief when people are willing to, join our Slack space or be part of our project management system. And so we can assign tasks without having to manage it in a different place. So I'm sure that's a welcome distinction, I guess, to your clients. Did you find that when you started advertising that or making that more, I guess, like readily available, that changed how people responded to maybe working with you versus other potential options?
Yeah, I think what brought kind of this shift in this type of offering was we were in talks with a potential brand who was navigating, do I want to hire a full-time team member or work with a creative agency in some type of capacity? And I really wanted to explore, well, how could we kind of be both? Be that copywriter as well as like that creative partner. So integrating into their comms and their programs was a simple kind of a low barrier to entry. And then on top of that, it just made it almost like well, why wouldn't we try this if we're essentially getting like an employee without having to pay the overhead, but always having a team member available and someone that will also kind of bring like that creative partnership to the clients. And I'd say other benefits in this type of partnership that we bring is there's constant ongoing coverage. So if a brand had hired, just one copywriter on their team and they're out sick or they need to take leave or on holiday, we're always there to cover. Even if one of our writers is out, there's always another writer that can support. And same goes for scaling up or down. Brands, go through different seasons where there's more product launches or campaigns, especially during holiday. A lot of people wearing a lot of hats and working way too much. And so we can really help to lean in and scale our team up as needed during those seasons or back down when things are slow. And then lastly is like, when I've worked with lots of brands, I've also been like one of two copywriters on a creative team when I was at Nike. And, we're writing tons of copy all the time. And creative burnout is inevitable when you're putting that on one person, and it's more common than not in the brand space. So we also like to, advertise that you're not just getting one writer, you're getting like a team of writers that they can also brainstorm and lean on for that creative input. So we can avoid that burnout and kind of spread the workload and make the work better as a result.
Yeah, those are huge strengths. The redundancy, like you said, of being able to have like a wide team to pull from, the flexibility, the diversity of creative minds that are coming to the table. I can see why all of those are so appealing to a brand. I'm curious from your side, working with, clients in potentially different time zones and with potentially different team structures. Does it ever make it difficult for you to navigate? Like, let's say if, one client is on Eastern time zone and their average working hours differ drastically than, let's say, for us on the West Coast, does it make it difficult for you to always be on, quote unquote, to be available, I guess, to respond in real time as a team member in sorts in this type of model?
Yeah, that's a good question. Time zones can be a challenge. We've learned to kind of scale our team to navigate those and to be available. So we have a studio manager who's on the East Coast. So she's catching those asks that come in early when maybe West Coast team is asleep. And we also have some writers that are on the East Coast too, to support with that very challenge or just different working dynamics. So thankfully we've been able to kind of support with the different time zones in that capacity. And then also being on the West Coast, there's an advantage where if they give us an ask later in their day, we can support to round it out or finish it by end of our day. And by the time they get online the next day, it's kind of ready. So we've been able to navigate those, but it all comes with its own challenges, of course.
Yeah, it kind of seems like from the client side, you're actually offering the best of both worlds, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
that's what I.
For your team structure, actually, I was wondering, the copywriters that you have as part of your studio, are those full-time employees of Lāer Studio, or kind of in a similar model? Are you working more in like a freelance capacity with a diverse roster of writers?
Yeah, I found running Lāer for the past 7 years now, having a diverse roster of freelance writers has been the best kind of makeup for us. These writers are very used to context switching from different projects and industries of clients that they're working on, and the fast-paced model that an agency typically welcomes. And we like to kind of curate our team of writers based on the client's needs and industry and the writer's background and expertise. We have some writers that have more experience in like the tech field, some who are well versed in e-commerce and product-based businesses, and some that maybe cater more to service-based businesses. So I've found, like, instead of putting one writer on all of our clients, that is just the road to burnout. It's much better to find writers that their background complements the brand's industry and expertise as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
For your writers and the type of copywriting services that you provide, do you provide all manners of copywriting? So everything from like conversion and sales copy to kind of more the weekly, let's say, newsletter content or web copy or social copy? Does it span the whole gamut, or do you have a specialty that Lāer Studio really likes to shine in?
Yeah, I'd say, I come from journalism background and working in the agency world and the brand side. So storytelling is a through line for me and something that I'm really passionate about and try to instill in our writers. More lately, though, I'd say wherever words are showing up, we're helping write those. So And with a lot of our brands being in the e-commerce space, a lot of that ends up being e-commerce emails to product descriptions to paid social ads and meta copy and Reddit copy and everything that you can imagine. So, or like scripts for small, video placements, kind of run the gamut for us, as well as longer form like surveys or reports for clients to brand messaging and campaign copy. We have a lot of experience across the board. It helps. I think that also really speaks to this like hybrid model, whereas, maybe they get a writer who's only had experience in one medium of copywriting versus us, we can kind of support across the board whatever they really need.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of almost imagine it's kind of like a video game where you like assemble your best
Yeah.
characters on a team based on like, their strength. Like this one's really strong, this one's really nimble, like whatever. So I can definitely see how that's a huge advantage. And I know that, in some of the materials you had submitted previous to this interview, you had mentioned that, these long-term partnerships really improve the quality of the creative work itself compared to maybe a more traditional agency model with those one-off project-based engagements. Can you expand on this a little bit more and maybe even share an example of how this long-term partnership approach has worked well with a brand that you have partnered with long-term?
Yeah. We've been working with Away, the luggage company, on and off now for almost 2 years. And for a while there, we were working on like a year-long partnership because they were in between hiring a writer and determining what their creative makeup team would look like. And so bringing us on, we were able to support with any and all copy needs that rose up at the time when they didn't have a writer. And then actually they started to expand their team and brought on another copywriter. And in that scenario, we were actually able to partner with that copywriter and support them, getting them up to speed on the brand voice, the inner workings of the brand's messaging, and be kind of a soft landing for them, into a very fast-paced creative environment. And then from that scenario, we've kind of expanded to support with voice reworks as the brand evolves and the team wants to reassess how they're showing up. We can come in and because we have that background and experience with the brand for so long, we can support to bring like that expert set of eyes and also outside set of eyes to determine like, is this still on brand? Is there ways that we can evolve this to better support the brand's goals today versus what they were, and really just be like that additional checkpoint.
How do you best co-create with teams that do have their own internal, W-2 writer, employee of that nature? I think it's amazing in the example that you just gave that you were able to really kind of assist in the onboarding process of the writer that they hired. I'm sure training employees is not part of the scope of work that you necessarily charge for, but what a great resource and asset to your client that you were able to provide that service for them. But for I guess like brands where you come in and they already have either a team of their own copywriters or maybe one in-house person, how do you kind of navigate that working relationship? What distinct tasks or deliverables or strategy fall to you guys that you lead versus taking the lead from the in-house person?
Yeah. A lot of times we kind of let the brand lead in terms of where they need us. And we just with the relationships that we've built, we're there to support in whatever capacity they need. So if it is leading another campaign simultaneously while the writer on staff is leading another one, we've supported in that regard. If it's holiday and the writer is overwhelmed and all of these other deliverables need to be completed, we'll support in that regard as well. So it really just depends, and it's super flexible. We've done both where we're, each kind of working on different projects, or we're coming together to support for coverage. More recently, the writer was out of town and we were supporting with her ongoing tasks so the team could keep things moving. Again, it's kind of going back to like treating us as if we are a team member, just essentially not, but we operate like we do. So we really ask them to lean on us in every which way that they need to. And the same goes for working with designers. A lot of times we're working with graphic designers on the team to collaborate on how the copy's going to look in design. So we really try to support them as much as we can and be available to them too.
I'm sure there's some people listening into this who are like, wow, I really love this model. Like, I would love to maybe adjust my agency type model to something similar to what you're doing at Lāer. A question that comes to mind, though, is because there is so much flexibility in scaling up and down the scope of work, and they're able to kind of call on you in a time of need, sometimes probably with not a lot of advance notice, right? How are you able to, I guess, price your services accordingly? Like, are you on a base retainer that then kind of flexes up if the needs arise throughout the month, or are you kind of custom quoting each quarter or each month based on the projects you think will be happening within the month?
Yeah. That's always a tricky pricing structure, and figuring out like this dynamic has always been just a challenge, and navigating what works best for both parties. And we found determining like a retainer price where the client is reserving our team's time and capacity for that month on an ongoing basis has been the best approach. And we typically will start like a 3-month trial run with the clients to see how that feels, to see if the workload is coming in that we scoped for, and if we need to scale up or scale down. We're tracking our time on our end, so we're aware of, where our team's spending the most time, if we are overworking or if we need to like rescope. And yeah, we just kind of keep an eye on that. We typically have found like a good sweet spot for this type of working relationship is like a 20-hour work week, supporting our clients on a month-to-month basis. And then outside of that, if things do scale up, we have the flexibility to add on more hours. And that is typically like as it happens, or if the client gives us a heads up, like, hey, we're going to have a couple more big projects coming up, let me know how we're doing on hours. We kind of adjust from there. We try to, as much as we can, like scope it out in advance if possible, but sometimes things do come up and it's on a, 1 week we're saying, hey, we need more hours to support, or sometimes it evens out. It's definitely tricky, but I found like the month to month helps ongoing, and then kind of having a little bit of flexibility from there.
That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. And I'm sure, like I said, thinking of this from the brand side or the business side, they really appreciate that flexibility. I know I do
Yeah.
when I work with people in a similar capacity. Another campaign, Rachel, that I know you're really proud of that your team worked on was Zolo's Taylor and Travis campaign. I would love for you to share a little bit more about the behind the scenes of that campaign. What really stood out to you? What were you able to bring in terms of creative strategy, or even if there was like a piece of copy that you feel particularly proud of that you want to share why you think it worked well for the brand. I think just getting a little peek inside your brain and how you think about copy would be really fascinating for our listeners.
Yeah, that was a very fun campaign. For context on that one, obviously Taylor Swift was recently engaged, and Zola wanted to take this idea that in a celebrity sense, the wedding of the year will be Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding. Like everyone's going to be watching, but how can we bring that to the Zola consumer, like the everyday couple, and bring magic into their own wedding, and almost position it as if like, you don't need to be a celebrity for your wedding to be the wedding of the year. Your wedding will be the wedding of the year. So that was kind of the message behind the campaign. And there was a lot of different deliverables to support that, with like a landing page and a lot of social copy to raise awareness. And in conjunction with the message, they also found everyday couple, Taylor and Travis, literally those are their names, who got engaged and are getting married this year. And Zola ended up funding their wedding. And a big part of the campaign was also learning about their registry. Like, what were they putting on their registry? How were they putting together their wedding website, and integrating a lot of Zola's existing tools. And it was just really fun to bring in just like people like you and me into this kind of celebrity moment and make it feel very real and relatable. That was something we were paying attention to a lot with the copy. So we wrote some of the video scripts for the social ads that were going out, where we're talking about them putting like, I think it was like a crock pot, or maybe it was an air fryer on their registry. And how can we like put an interesting spin on this, where it's like, she wants this and he wants that, and just making it really fun and just relatable. So I can't pull out like specific lines of copy, but I'll have to direct people to the social post, because it's also just super heartwarming to see just a beautiful raw couple celebrating their love.
I love that concept. I missed the boat on seeing the actual campaign, so it was really fun to kind of like retroactively reflect on it. prior to this interview. I'm actually just so curious, like, do they put almost out like a, for lack of a better word, like a talent search? Like, hey, are there any couples getting married who share the same names, Taylor and Travis? Or do they just literally happen upon a couple with those exact names that had, secured a registry with Zola?
I think it was the securing the registry part. I think,
So
but don't
funny.
quote me on that. Yeah. But it was one of Zola's couples, which is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a fun coincidence. And what a great campaign to really flex your
Yeah.
storytelling skills with. I can imagine there were so many fun angles to approach that from. Are there any other projects you've worked on recently that you want to share with our listeners?
We've worked on a lot of fun projects with Away. I'm a big travel person, so getting to work with a brand like that really celebrates the power of travel has been so fun. And throughout our time working with them, they've launched a ton of different product lines and campaigns. One of the more recent ones, like a year ago, they have it now. It's kind of a standing product line, is their kids collection, which was just really fun to write to, thinking about how can we bring like the magic of travel to these little ones and make travel easier for parents as well. And the collection was just so colorful and bright and just a lot of fun to work on. And there's been other ones too, like they also developed a courtside collection for tennis bags since, the tennis scene has been very, very hot, as well as like an active collection to support people kind of commuting or going from the gym to the work to the train. So just a lot of different relatable life moments that we can get behind as writers ourselves and feel passionate about and bring the Away voice through.
That's amazing. I actually got a monogrammed Away backpack as a gift from a brand partner years ago, and I still use it
Yeah,
all the time when I travel. So
great.
it's so cool. Now, when I engage with the brand, I'll be thinking of you. I'll be like, oh, I wonder if Rachel put these words on paper. So it is really humanizing, I think, to remember at the end of the day, like all the messaging and the content that we see brands put out in the world. Like there's a person, there's a face, a name behind,
Mhm.
who thought that or breathed it into existence. So very cool to know, that you're influencing some of these major brands that we see in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
I wanted to briefly circle back to, this integration within the teams. I realized I forgot to ask you an important thing that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering if they want to implement anything similar, like a similar type of business model. How are you setting boundaries in these types of embedded partnerships so that you can show up your best and do your best work, but you don't become this like catch-all for their team to just like throw tasks onto?
Yeah, that's something that we really try to prioritize in the early days of the conversation, communicating that we solely focus on copywriting. Like we're not here to become like your marketing manager or designer. We're really trying to focus on what we're hired for. So that's something that we prioritize on the upfront. And then also I'd say we talked briefly about time zones, but if requests come in late or on a Friday and the client's asking for delivery on Monday, we really try to refrain from working on the weekends. And, like no one wants to do that. So just holding our ground and prioritizing our off time too, so our writers can thrive the best. And I'd also say that goes with turnaround times for revisions as well. Sometimes giving your writers or your creative team more time to work on creative will make the end result even better than them rushing for like a quick end of day deliverable. So we try to really integrate that into how we're communicating and when we're asked to work on revisions and things like that. Of course, things come up and we try to roll with it, but I think having those kind of guardrails from the get-go really help for like a sustainable working relationship.
Absolutely. And for like those rare instances, I guess, where something does come up and it's, kind of spur of the moment, hey, I need this in 2 hours or by the end of the day. Do you charge a rush fee in those instances? Or is it kind of like, okay, if it's rare enough, we'll allow it. But if it becomes a pattern, then, something needs to change about the pricing?
Yeah, we don't charge a rush fee in those instances. We have had situations where we've been working with a brand for a while, took a little break, and they brought us back on for a project that was kicking off like tomorrow. We had a rush fee for that. So because it was a very large project. So
Understandable.
we kind of take it on a case by case basis. And most of the time it doesn't come up. I'd say if it were a recurring instance, we would initiate something like a rush fee to kind of set those guardrails for sure.
Right. No, that's super helpful to hear. To wrap up our conversation, what advice would you give to founders or marketing leaders who are hearing this conversation today and they feel really stretched thin? Either they don't have the budget to support like a fully built out, marketing team, or they do have a team, but they're still kind of like struggling with that creative burnout that you were talking about, being like the one to shoulder all of the doing. What next step would you give them, and how would you encourage them, I guess, to ask for the right kind of support they need?
Yeah, we've all been there. I think we're all still kind of there, right? As we navigate entrepreneurship, figuring out what we need and knowing what to ask for. And I think that's a great place to start, is understanding like, where are the bottlenecks? Where are you really spending too much of your time that you could pass off to another team member? And that can help to determine like, who is the right person to wear that hat. In our instance, it's copywriting. It's very specific, very clear. I'd say when we're speaking with brands about potentially working together, a lot of them, they haven't necessarily thought about this as another potential solution. So I'd also encourage those listening to be open to the types of solutions that could come in to support you in your business. They might not be the typical like one person creative or a team. It might be kind of a hybrid, or a few different people in smaller capacities to support like the larger mission. So just being open to what that can look like for you, because all of our businesses are unique. And I think, there's no one size fits all. Just because another owner has done something that's worked for them doesn't mean it's the right answer for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it would be really helpful to hear from your perspective, if someone's interested in working with Lāer Studio, where do you feel like Lāer Studio best fits in as a solution? Like if someone, let's say, realizes, okay, I do want to outsource some of my copywriting. I don't necessarily want to hire a full-time team member, or maybe I need support from my full-time team member who's doing this. If they don't know exactly what that scope looks like, is there such a thing as too small of a copywriting scope to hand off first? Like, do you require someone to kind of hand off their full copywriting needs? What does that look like from your perspective? And then also, if, let's say, a business owner kind of needs to choose because their budget is a little bit more restrictive, which type of copywriting would you recommend business owners let go of first?
All very good questions. So for us, we started out working with small business owners, and they'll always have a special place in my heart. I mean, that's what I am essentially as well. So in addition to these like creative partnerships that we have with larger brands, we also still love supporting smaller business owners where we're working directly with the founder. That work is also so rewarding for us. And that work typically isn't on an ongoing basis. It's more like one-off projects where we're maybe coming in to support on a website copy or brand messaging or a sales page, typically like a push. We do support some other smaller scale agencies where we're their sole copywriter on the team. And that's a great kind of additional option that's a bit smaller on a retainer basis, but we found it to be still sustainable for both parties. And then in terms of like, what copy should they offload first? Like what would be the first element? I'd say like, it depends on where kind of the friction is in their business. If it's communicating on social media and not getting leads, like I would want to look at like how they're marketing their services and their messaging. So it's kind of starting at the foundation and understanding like, does this clearly communicate who you are as a business and your offerings and attracting like that ideal client? And from there, that really might help support the steps that come after, like posting on social media, because you have clarity in how you communicate to your copy on your website. So I'd say like it depends on what the challenge is, and starting, we typically like to look at the foundation and making sure that that's strong. And then from there, are we applying it correctly to the different channels?
I love that reverse engineer approach. That's how I feel like approach most problems. So that was a great answer. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your wisdom here with our listeners. I would love to know how we can continue to, or we, I say we as in myself and everyone listening, can continue to connect with you and Lāer Studio and explore the resources and support that you offer.
Thank you for having me, Ellen. Everyone can find us at laerstudio.com, and it's the same handle on Instagram as well, and also on LinkedIn too.
Amazing. By the way, that's Lāer spelled Laer. So just so you guys know, but don't worry, all of the links will be below in the show notes. So you can click directly over, connect with Rachel, connect with Lāer, and make sure you say hi, especially if this made you think about your business in a different way, whether you're in the seat of a founder who maybe needs some support on the copywriting side, or whether you also have a business in a similar service space and you've kind of like been intrigued by how Rachel and her team operates in a slightly different model than the traditional agency. Either way, I know our guests love hearing your feedback, and I do too. So please send us a DM. And Rachel, thank you so much again for joining us. And for all of you, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, Ellen.